Good evening, everybody. Hope that you're doing good. I know I am. Apologize for missing last week. I had a bit of a cold, but I'm back. The sun is shining, and I'm here with you for another Thiel Tuesday, reading 0 to 1 together, thinking about it. Last time around, we talked about monopolies and the lies that they tell. And now we're moving into a chapter called Follow the Money. And the opening sentence is very succinct and very accurate and describes what this chapter is all about in 3 words. Money makes money. If you've spent any time in business or any time just out observing the world, you'll know that this is true. Look at the big institutions, for instance, in Canada. They're protected by regulation, and they have lots of money. Those are the banks. Look at oil companies. The big oil companies have a ton of money. They can use that money to research, to take on plays that are capital intensive, such as massive oil sands projects, or deep offshore projects, or massive seismic shoots, or huge pipelines, even though we don't build pipelines anymore in Canada. Theoretically, they could build pipelines. You need to have a certain amount of size to take on projects of that sort of scale. And if you can do that, you make money. If you're scraping together a few bucks to build a house and turn around and sell it, you might make a little. You might lose, but you're definitely not making the sort of money that a big condo developer stands to make. And their access to capital is a game changer. So, but why is that? Why is it that money makes money? And in the book, Thiel talks about a few of the reasons, which you can call the power law, compound interest, the Pareto Principle. It's sort of a funny thing when you think about it, that certain of these things just do sort of tend to pool in nature. For instance, Pareto noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. Another example would be 20% of the pea pods producing 80% of the peas. You can, I'm sure, think of some other examples in your everyday life. Maybe 20% of the kids on your hockey team got 80% of the goals. Your top line. I don't know. Think about it. On Tinder or something, 20% of the best-looking guys get 80% of the replies, or some number similar. I'm sure, on that level. The biggest earthquakes cause a lot more damage than millions of small ones, because they're happening all the time. You don't even feel them if they're small enough. So, in venture cap, there's sort of a special application of this. So, what Thiel talks about is essentially lays out the idea of venture capital, which is essentially somebody taking a whole bunch of money from investors and then finding something to invest it in. And in the case of venture capital, that's going to be ventures or startups as a rule, as opposed to, your standard company that's funded by investors that might drill for oil, or be a woodworking company that makes furniture. So Thiel talks about the nature of companies that should be getting looked at for venture capital, because they're looking at this sort of unique startup realm, being realistic about it. Most of the startups, most of the investments are going to fail. So, if you know that most are going to fail, what follows naturally is that the ones that don't fail have to be big winners, have to be exponentially huge winners. Think about it, maybe if you're an oil company and you thought, well, we're going to drill a whole bunch of wells, we're going to be exploring. We know that a lot are going to fail. And we need one or two to be absolute boomers. We need one or two to be like 10,000 barrels a day to pay for the rest. And to also make money for our investors. Because that's the name of the game. You gotta make money at the end of the day. Otherwise, stay at home. Okay? Or do something else. Just do a YouTube for fun. So, with that said, let's just say this. I'll take this beautiful italicized quote. The biggest secret in venture capital is that the best investment in a successful fund equals or outperforms the entire rest of the fund combined. So if you have $1 billion, you got to be looking at each investment that you make, even if it's $1 million investment, as being something that can return you $1 billion. Those are the rules of this funny high-stakes game that Thiel is describing and that he has been personally successful at. And the power law is something that is probably even more stark in the case of these tech startups, because at some level, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, at some level with their failures, is there a way you can get anything? Can you salvage the code? I mean, when I think of an oil company, and tech people can please help me with this, I guess you could salvage an email list or something. When you think of an oil company that fails, at the very least you ought to be able to get some wells and stuff out of it. Like in Calgary, what was sort of classically done was that two of the local investment banks, they would fund people and they sort of held the strings. So if a company didn't work out, what they would do is essentially salvage their investment by selling it to another company that they controlled. That way they could take that land, take the wells, take whatever production there was, and sort of use it accretively. Anyway, so that's sort of the funny thought I had on that, thinking of that in an oil context. But let me know about that in a software context or a venture capital context if you have any thoughts on that. I'd be more than happy to hear them. I hope that you're having a great week. We'll talk next week about the rest of Chapter 7. In the meantime, in between time, have a great week, get some sun, and we will talk soon. Thank you.